Hello, my name is Paul Brewster, and welcome to Coffee with the Dead. In today's episode, we will be visiting the gravesite of Margaret Mitchell, a lifelong resident of Georgia and a Pulitzer Prize-winning author for Gone with the Wind. Margaret Mitchell was born at the very beginning of the 20th century in the year 1900. In her lifetime, she survived the riots of 1906, the Great Fire of Atlanta in 1917, and the Spanish flu, which lasted from 1918 to 1920. Upon graduating from Washington Seminary, Margaret Mitchell attended Smith College in the fall of 1918. However, her studies were cut short with the death of her mother, Maybelle Mitchell, in 1919. Maybelle died of pneumonia from the Spanish flu. After finishing her freshman year at Smith, Mitchell returned to Atlanta to take over the household for her father and never returned to college. At the age of 20, Margaret Mitchell was a very flirtatious socialite. At one point, she was engaged to 5 different men at the same time. But by the age of 21, Mitchell would narrow the playing field down to just 2 possible suitors, whom she would see almost daily and would ultimately marry. Oh, it gets better. Margaret Mitchell was married twice in her lifetime. Her first husband, Barry Red Upshaw, was a bootlegger out of the mountains of North Georgia. Her second husband, John Marsh, ironically, was not only Upshaw's roommate in college, but he was also Upshaw's best man when he married Margaret Mitchell. Before Upshaw became a bootlegger, he was in the Naval Academy, but he dropped out. Not once, but twice. While married to Upshaw and with no professional writing experience, Mitchell became a journalist with the Atlanta Journal. Her first article was published in December of 1922. Less than 4 years later, her journalism career would come to an end after suffering an ankle injury. It was at this point that she became a full-time wife while married to John Marsh. With nothing but time on her hands, Margaret Mitchell began writing Gone with the Wind in 1928. Armed with the Remington portable typewriter, an intimate knowledge of the Civil War, a boundless imagination, she would embark on a journey that would make literal history. The now newlywed Marshes moved into the Crescent Avenue apartments, which they affectionately named the Dump, which has since been renamed the Margaret Mitchell House and Museum. Let's go for a visit. Years ago, in 1925, Margaret Mitchell and her husband, John Marsh, moved into the ground floor of this 3-story apartment building, which is located at the corner of 10 and Peachtree Street. The house was originally built in 1899 as a single-level family residence, which was located just a few feet from the street. So around 1920, the house was moved to the back part of the lot. A 3rd story was added, and then the house was converted into an apartment building. So in addition to the Margaret Mitchell House and Museum, there's also the Margaret Mitchell Square. Let's go. I am now standing in the Margaret Mitchell Square, which is technically a triangle that you see behind me. But before the city was rezoned, the square actually went from the glass building behind me there to the library right there to the Georgia Pacific building right there. On December 15th, 1939, Gone with the Wind premiered at the Loew's Grand Theater, which used to be located directly behind me. Sadly, in 1977, the Loew's Grand Theater burnt down. So in 1982, the building that you see behind me, the Georgia Pacific Center, opened its doors. Everybody dies, but how Margaret Mitchell passed is truly horrendous. On August 11, 1949, while crossing the street here at 13th and Peachtree, Margaret Mitchell was tragically struck by a drunk driver. 5 days later, on August 16th, Margaret Mitchell died here at Grady Memorial Hospital. A tremendous talent that passed way too soon. Margaret Mitchell Marsh lived a very full life. And even though as a writer, she was only published once. But that publication, Gone with the Wind, turned out to be one of the greatest novels ever written and earned her a Pulitzer Prize in fiction. A one-hit wonder? You could say that. But because of her fame and notoriety, Margaret Mitchell was able to help millions of people, not only here in Atlanta, but worldwide. A truly remarkable feat, given the fact that this is the early 1940s, just as World War II is getting underway. 125 years after her birth, the world is still talking about Margaret Mitchell and the great impact that she had on humanity. What's your legacy going to be?